Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Meadows, and I'm the Director of the Division of Energy Assistance within the Office of Community Services, or OCS, in the Administration for Children and Families. On behalf of the division, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on using the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, or LIHEAP, Performance Management website to access LIHEAP data and resources. Today's webinar is being presented by Melissa Torgerson from Verve Associates, Dan Bouch from Apprise, Michelle Gillum from the Arkansas Department of Energy and Environment, Richard Giddings from the Vermont Department of Children and Families, Lisa Gobentinato from the Oregon Housing and Community Services, and Katrina Metzler from the National Energy and Utility Affordability Coalition, or NUAC. Next slide, please. For today's webinar, we are excited to share information with you about the LIHEAP Performance Management website, or PMW. The PMW is a specialty website created to help grant recipients, policymakers, and stakeholders access and use performance management information and historic LIHEAP performance measurement data. The purpose of this webinar includes explaining why there are 3 distinct LIHEAP websites funded by OCS, provide an overview of the LIHEAP PMW and its primary content, and highlight several of the website's most important tools and resources. The audience for today's webinar is LIHEAP stakeholders, including grant recipients and their staff, local agencies and governments, utility program staff, low-income energy service organizations, and others. Today's webinar is 45 minutes, and the slides are available to download in the handout sidebar. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the ACF YouTube channel to view or share with others. Next slide, please. We encourage you to ask questions today in the GoToWebinar question box found at the bottom of the sidebar, which is shown here on the screen. Questions will be reviewed and responded to at the end of the webinar or via email. Next slide. Here is a short outline for today's webinar, and we greatly appreciate you joining us today and hope our presentation will help you get the most out of the LIHEAP Performance Management website. And with that, Melissa, please take it away.
Thanks, Megan. Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Torgerson, and I work with Apprise, who's one of the contractors that provides support to OCS and technical assistance to grant recipients. As Megan mentioned, there are 3 unique websites. And so to start, I'm going to be explaining why OCS has funded these 3 separate sites and the purpose of each of them. So the first website is the federal LIHEAP page on the Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families site. And this includes the LIHEAP statute and regulations, official reports from OCS, and contact information for OCS staff and LIHEAP grant recipients. Now, this site is where OCS stores documents that furnish official guidance regarding program rules and regulations and policies, and these are otherwise called information memoranda, action transmittals, and dear colleague letters. This website also has training, toolkits, dashboards, and a myriad of other resources, and some of these are tailored for program managers, but many are valuable to a broader range of stakeholders. The second website OCS funds is the LIHEAP Clearinghouse, and this clearinghouse was designed by the National Center for Appropriate Technology and OCS to furnish detailed information about the design and implementation of each state, territory, and tribe's LIHEAP programs. The site also provides information on other low-income energy assistance and energy efficiency resources that complement LIHEAP. The Clearinghouse also hosts the National Energy Assistance Referral, or NEAR service, and its companion website, the Energy Help page. And both of these refer households needing assistance to a local LIHEAP office. We hosted a webinar on the Clearinghouse in September, and there's a recording available, and we'll go ahead and post a link to this recording in the chat. So finally, the star of our show today is the LIHEAP Performance Management website, and this website furnishes resources and tools to help program administrators and policymakers and the public access data and resources needed for LIHEAP performance management. So to give you a brief overview, the performance management website was developed a decade ago by OCS with the help of the LIHEAP Performance Management Implementation Work Group, or the PMIWG. Now, this group consists of about 15 state, tribal, and territory grant recipients who came together with OCS, and they actually developed LIHEAP performance measures, and they continue working to improve LIHEAP performance management across the nation. And their work included developing this performance management website. The original goal of this website was to make LIHEAP data more accessible, and data was first available to grant recipients, and then it was made public in 2017. Today, the performance management website continues to make historic LIHEAP data available for use and also functions as kind of a one-stop location for tools and training and resources on LIHEAP performance management. And if you visit, you'll find that the site is updated and expanded with new data and resources regularly. So as mentioned, the performance management website has grown over time to include a comprehensive set of tools and resources, and these are all intended to help users, whether they be grant recipients or the public, collect, analyze, and utilize, and even talk about LIHEAP data. For example, the performance management website hosts a data warehouse that allows users to build reports and tables and charts, and this is using over 20 years of LIHEAP data. We have tools and case studies that help program managers and other stakeholders use LIHEAP performance data and assess the reliability of their data. We have resources and information that helps staff and the public find information on specific LIHEAP topics. And there are a wide range of webinars and training materials related to data collection and reporting and using data for decision making. So I'm going to now turn it over to Dan Bausch of Apprise, who will give you an overview of the performance management website.
Thank you, Melissa, and hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to show you some of the key sections of the performance management website, which was recently updated to improve the design and to also add some new resources. Okay, this is the home page for the performance management website. The link shown on this slide in the bottom right is the URL to get to the website. And we've also added it to the chat for this webinar, so you could go to it now and add it to your bookmarks or save it for later use to explore the website. There's some important features of the home page that I want to note for you. First is you'll notice the blue bar at the top of the website. This blue bar contains each of the primary sections of the website. You can navigate to them, and you can always click home all the way on the left to return back to this home page shown here. Below the blue bar on the home page is the second feature of the home page, a rotating carousel that has descriptions for each section of the website and some of the most important resources. So it's good to click through this and find out about different sections of the website. One thing you'll find in that carousel is a what's new update that's updated on a regular basis to tell you what items have recently been added to the website and what resources are coming soon and in development. So here's the what's new for October 2024. On the right side of the homepage and throughout the performance management website, there are 3 icon buttons that are shown on each page that are very important. The yellow icon is for the National Energy Assistance Referral Hotline, or the nearenergyhelp.us website, and that's a source of information to help households that are looking for energy assistance to find where to apply and who to call and where to go. The second icon below that is the LIHEAP Virtual Library, and Lisa is going to talk about that resource in a few minutes and what you can find there. And then the last icon at the bottom is a tool called the LIHEAP Website Navigator that can be used if you're trying to find LIHEAP information across each of the 3 federal LIHEAP websites that Melissa described earlier. Finally, we have a newer feature on the home page, and that's the most common links shown in the red box here. This includes some of the very important, often used resources that you might be looking for and that we often receive requests to find. Now we're going to go to the first section on the blue bar, the publications page. This has information and links to two key LIHEAP reports. First is the LIHEAP Report to Congress. This is an annual report that summarizes LIHEAP activity in a given fiscal year. And the second report is the LIHEAP Home Energy Notebook. And that report consists of 3 different documents that describe low-income home energy needs and trends over time. We encourage you to look at all of these reports that provide important information on the LIHEAP program. Next section of the website is the data warehouse. This is where you can go to access state-level annual data and to also make your own charts, tables, and reports using that data. We're going to hear more about this later in the webinar, but we want you to know that there are not only tools here, but also resources and a tutorial to help you use the data warehouse and understand the data sources. The next key section is the performance measures page. This is a one-stop location to find out about the LIHEAP performance measures initiative, how to access performance measures data, and to use some of the tools that have been developed by the working group to assess and understand what LIHEAP performance measures data show. Then the last section we're going to look at with you today is the program resources. This section was designed by LIHEAP program managers and coordinators working with our team and working with HHS. And the purpose of this page is to help program managers and stakeholders find information on the data that LIHEAP collects, how that data can be used, and how program managers can make incremental improvements. So these are all the main sections of the website we wanted to highlight for you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Michelle to talk about the data warehouse.
Thank you, Dan. Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Gillum. I'm from the Arkansas Department of Energy and Environment. And like Dan said, today I'm going to be walking you through some of the key resources in the data warehouse. So basically, the data warehouse has 3 essential tools that provide different ways to find or access your LIHEAP data. The first is the grant recipient profile, which gives a comprehensive snapshot that summarizes key metrics of a state grant recipient's LIHEAP program. Later in the webinar, Katrina Metzler from NUAC will discuss the grant recipient profiles more in depth. Today, I'm going to discuss the other 2 tools in the data warehouse that you can use to generate your own reports with LIHEAP data, the standard reports and custom reports. To start, your standard reports offer a quick and reliable way to get predefined data presented through structured tables, charts, and insights. The reports are efficient and consistent, which make them perfect for when you need a straightforward look at the data. You can choose from 3 different standard reports: single state reports, state comparison reports, and national reports. Your custom reports put you in control of selecting data elements and making your own report. Not only can you pick different data or filters for a more layered analysis, you can also customize the title and subtitle of the report, as well as the type of chart used to display your data. So whether you're looking to highlight key metrics for a specific audience or you want to dig into targeted insights, custom reports ensure that you get the detailed, specific data that you need to make informed decisions. Next, this is an example of a standard report that shows the number of households that received heating assistance from FY 2021 through FY 2023, and it's broken down by vulnerability type. The beauty of standard reports like this one is with just a few clicks, you can generate key metrics that are frequently requested. Plus, they are perfect for quickly seeing insights. So while those standard reports are quick and easy to generate, they may not be exactly what you are always looking for. For example, if we wanted to look at vulnerable households that received any type of assistance, not just those that received heating assistance. We would need to look into custom reports. So with custom reports, you have two different options. You can either build a report from scratch, or you can customize a predefined standard report. For instance, in this custom report, I started with the standard report that we just looked at, then replaced the statistics on vulnerable households that received heating to those for vulnerable households that received any type of assistance. I also customized the report's title to more clearly describe its focus and also specify the time frame. Then I added a subtitle that gave it an extra level of detail that we needed for clarity and context. So custom reports let you dive deeper into your data and tailor your presentation to your specific needs. Together, the grant recipient profiles, the standard reports, and custom reports provide three different ways that we can explore and get our LIHEAP data. You can also find a tutorial on the data warehouse resources on how to use the different report options. Next up, Richard from Vermont is going to walk us through the PMW's program resources and performance measures pages. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Michelle. Hi, everyone. I'm Richard Giddings, Vermont's LIHEAP Program Director. I'll be discussing some of the key resources from the Program Resources and Performance Measures page on the LIHEAP Performance Management website. The Program Resources page and the Program Measures page provide material to help understand LIHEAP impacts and shared results with other partners. They also provide access to training materials for the LIHEAP stakeholder community. Today, we'll focus on three key resources. The first is the Performance Measures Executive Summaries. The second will be Communication Templates. And the third will be a LIHEAP Conference Presentations. The first tool I'm going to talk about today is the Executive Summary, a one-page snapshot of key performance measure data. This snapshot includes information like energy burdens of households before and after LIHEAP assistance, the share of home energy bill reduced by LIHEAP assistance, energy statistics for higher burdened households before and after being assisted, prevention of home energy loss and restoration of home energy services, equipment repair and replacements, and more. Essentially, the executive summary answers two important questions. Does the LIHEAP program furnish higher benefits to higher burdened households? And does the LIHEAP program pay a larger share of the home energy bill for higher burdened households? As a reminder, the LIHEAP statute requires that assistance targeted to the highest burdened households as well as those with vulnerable members. This is Vermont's executive summary for fiscal year 2023. You can see in the top left how it provides information on key performance indicators that answer those two big questions. For the first question, does LIHEAP furnish higher benefits to higher burdened households? In Vermont's case, the answer is yes. Higher burdened households receive a benefit that was about 40% higher than the average benefit received by all households. And for the second question, does LIHEAP pay a larger share of the home energy bill for higher burdened households? Again, for Vermont, the answer is yes. Higher burdened households received a benefit that covered about 43% of their bill on average compared to all households who received coverage for 41% of their bill. The executive summary provides a chart that compares performance metrics across all households and high burdened households. These metrics like average energy bill, income, benefit amount, the percent of energy bill paid by LIHEAP, and the energy burden before and after LIHEAP. Finally, on the lower half of the executive summary, there's information about prevention and restoration of home energy services loss. In Vermont, we work closely with our utility providers to try and prevent the disconnection of services, as it is often much more costly to restore that service. The PMW also has a variety of communication resources to help explain the impacts of LIHEAP on household energy burden, which can be very helpful to stakeholders. Specifically, there are 3-letter templates with talking points for different stakeholders, one for grant recipients, one for energy vendors, and one for legislators. Here we have an example of the communication template for energy vendor partners. If you're interested in learning more about these templates, please reach out to a prize for assistance. Contact information will be posted at the end of the webinar. If you are a utility or vendor and would be interested in receiving this for your state, please reach out to your state LIHEAP contact and a prize. Under the final drop-down of the program resources page at the last available hyperlink, you will find the link to the LIHEAP conferences presentation page, which has previous recordings from sessions at conferences like NUAC, which many stakeholders may be familiar with. I'll take a moment to discuss the latest session recording from the 2024 NUAC conference from earlier this year. The first session recording we have available from NUAC is LIHEAP 101, which provides an overview of basic LIHEAP rules and procedures. The next session recording you can access is LIHEAP 102, which goes over benefit determination procedures, a few different examples of procedures, and pros and cons of each example. The last recording from NUAC discusses state-tribe agreements, which establish funding allocations for tribes as negotiated between state grant recipients and tribal grant recipients. These are just some of the recordings made available that stakeholders will find useful. Once again, I am Richard Giddings from Vermont. It was a pleasure to walk you through these amazing resources on the program resources and performance measures page. I'm now going to hand it over to Lisa, who will show you how to use the LIHEAP virtual library. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Richard. Hello, everybody. My name is Lisa Gobin-Toninato. I am the Senior Energy Programs Compliance and Policy Officer at Oregon Housing and Community Services. I am also a member of the LIHEAP Performance Management Implementation Work Group. I'd like to walk you through another tool you can use to locate important resources called the LIHEAP Virtual Library. The LIHEAP Virtual Library is a valuable tool for any stakeholder looking to find resources and background information pertaining to the LIHEAP program. From the LIHEAP homepage, you want to click on the LIHEAP Virtual Library icon on the right-hand side of the screen. This icon will be there as you navigate through this website. So here we have the LIHEAP Virtual Library homepage. The LIHEAP Virtual Library is a tool that allows you to find and download resources according to the area you're interested in and what questions you might have. The main LIHEAP Program Basics bubble is surrounded by other bubbles for different LIHEAP topic areas. You can click on each bubble to find more information about each selected topic. Let's go ahead and see what happens if we click on the main Program Basics bubble in the middle. So information about the program area we click on pops up on the right-hand side. For the Program Basics bubble at the top, we have a link to the snapshot, which is a page that provides a brief overview of the selected program area, but more on that later. Below the snapshot link, there's a series of menu dropdowns, each with a question commonly asked about the program area. Each menu can be expanded to uncover a list of technical resources that help address each specific question. Let's see what's on the Program Basics snapshot. This snapshot, like others, will go into further detail about why the program area is important, to whom, how you can learn more, and the ways you can use the resources that are provided. On this page, we learn what LIHEAP is, the rules that provide the framework under which LIHEAP is run, and key LIHEAP resources. For example, there's a page with the LIHEAP statutes, and on a separate one, showing the LIHEAP Grant Recipient Resource Guide. Next, let's go back to the Program Basics page. As mentioned before, there are a series of menu dropdowns with questions and their associated resources. If you have a question about the basic responsibilities under the law, you can expand that tab by clicking Expand and Collapse. And then you can also find links to things like the LIHEAP Primer and the LIHEAP Statute. One other feature of the LIHEAP Virtual Library is the toolbox. Beside each resource link, you can check a box to add it to your toolbox. By checking these boxes, you can save resources that you've selected as you navigate across the website. Then, down the Download them all at once with the click of a button. Now let's check out one more bubble. This is the subgrantee contracts and agreements bubble. These contracts or agreements are used by subgrantees to establish how client applications are processed, client eligibility is determined, and how energy bills and energy equipment repairs or replacements are paid for. These agreements ensure compliance with federal and grant recipient requirements. If we go to the snapshot, we can go into further detail about this program area. We see that contracts also outline how local outreach may be conducted and establish expectations to ensure oversight and accountability. These agreements, we also learn, have been required by the LIHEAP statute and Office of Management and Budget, also commonly referred to as OMB. There are also examples linked, including other resources that further explain the business processes involved. Let's explore the resources under the first question. I'm creating or updating subgrantee agreements and would like to have a list of elements I should be including, or at least that I'm thinking about. To answer this question, we can look at an element like the training on subgrantee risk assessments, which can be opened and downloaded. I've shown you a quick overview of the LIHEAP Virtual Library. We hope you explore it more on your own. Once again, I am Lisa Gobin-Toninato from Oregon Housing and Community Services, and I'm going to turn it over to Katrina.
Thank you, Lisa. Hi, everyone. I'm Katrina Metzler. I'm the Executive Director for the National Energy and Utility Affordability Coalition, better known as NEWAC. To those who might be unfamiliar with NEWAC, we're a nonprofit that heightens awareness of the energy affordability needs of vulnerable households, and we bring together a diverse group of stakeholders that are all involved in utility assistance. We host an annual conference, which Richard touched on briefly earlier. Thank you, Richard. And we also actively engage in advocacy and education to promote LIHEAP and other initiatives to meet critical utility needs. As a LIHEAP stakeholder myself, I wanted to walk through how I use the resources made available specifically on the data warehouse page to find key LIHEAP program outcomes. I often go to the data warehouse to find statistics that I'm asked about from NEWAC members, utilities, nonprofits, and other stakeholders. Next slide, please. What you're looking at is the main LIHEAP data warehouse page, which again hosts historical national and state LIHEAP data that you can access in the form of reports, tables, and charts. I first want to focus on the grant recipient profiles, which you can find again on this page. These break down key program outcomes for state LIHEAP programs in any federal fiscal year. Grant recipient profiles provide comprehensive snapshots that summarize key metrics of a state LIHEAP grant recipient's program conveniently on the same page. It's nice to have high-level information for each state together on a single page. The profiles include metrics such as total funding, how funds were obligated, the number of households that were served, the vulnerable populations that were served, average benefit amounts, and historical data on funding levels. Every year, PRIZE creates a grant recipient profile for each state grant recipient, with the most recent available being for federal fiscal year 2023. Additionally, grant recipient profiles for tribes and territories will soon be available. So they're coming soon, and those will be very much appreciated by stakeholders, I'm sure. We're going to take a look closer at Minnesota's profile for FY 2023 as an example. So let's say I've been asked by a constituent or a member of NEWAC what the income eligible population is of a state like Minnesota. That information can be found right here on the sheet. For Minnesota, that number was 587,165 households in FY 2023. Another important metric I may need is the share of the total of income eligible households that were actually able to be served with LIHEAP funding. This statistic also can be found in the profile on the left-hand side, and as you can see, about 23% of the state's eligible population was able to be served with existing LIHEAP funding in 2023, or about 1 in 4 households. It goes without saying that the converse is that 3 out of 4 households were not able to be served, and these data tell an important story. Another interesting metric is the number of households served that are home to at least one vulnerable person, a person with disabilities, child, older person. This information is found in the rightmost pie chart, and we can see that of households served in Minnesota, 75% had a vulnerable member. The report also shows how funding was allocated according to the different program components like heating assistance, cooling assistance, weatherization. We can find statistics on funding allocations in the topmost pie chart. I encourage stakeholders to check out these profiles because they provide key statistics for state programs in an easily digestible manner. Let's say I'm interested in the latest information on the number and types of households served by LIHEAP in Minnesota. For that data, we actually need to go to another section of the data warehouse. So the standard reports section provides step-by-step guidance in developing the charts and tables with program information that I'm looking for. To get what I need, a single state report will be generated, but you also have the option to compare state programs and explore national statistics. As you can see, it's possible to choose from different program topics. I'm interested in assisted household figures. More specifically, let's say I'm interested in data on the share of assisted households with members 60 years of age or older. I can select the state I'm interested in, which is still Minnesota. I can choose the year I'm interested in as well, which is FY23. Now I'm ready to view my report. Finally, I can see a pie chart with a breakdown of the share of assisted households with members 60 years of age or older for Minnesota in FY23. The warehouse makes it easy to find or build custom reports for the program area stakeholders would be interested in. The data warehouse has information going back to 2001 for states, though the most recent years, in this case, that's FY22 and 23, are preliminary, pending final data validation. Many thanks to OCS Enterprise for the opportunity to showcase some of the most useful functions and reports on the LIHEAP data warehouse from an outside perspective. Now I'll turn it back over to Melissa, who will give us some final reminders.
Thanks, Katrina. And hello again, everyone. I'm going to provide some final reminders before we turn to your questions. First, it's important to point out that there are some planned improvements to the website that are currently in the works. These include the exciting development of tribal and territory LIHEAP profiles. That'll be similar to the state profile that you just saw Katrina walk through. In addition, special profiles are being created to summarize how the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA funds, were used to assist households. And finally, OCS is exploring how to add tribal and territory data to the data warehouse, as well as additional standard reports based on common information requests. Now, you saw a lot on today's webinar, a lot of different ways that you can go in the data warehouse, a lot of different resources that you can sift through and find critical information. It also has help tools, though, available if you need additional assistance using this website. For example, the help page has tips for finding resources and using tools, while the help desk allows you to ask for one-on-one assistance from one of the Apprise staff members. It can get overwhelming sometimes, especially when you get into the custom data warehouse and you want to go down a million rabbit trails, but you may need to answer just one question. And so, as Richard mentioned earlier, Apprise is always available, and you can contact them directly to help you find a specific data point or answer a specific question you may be getting from someone in the field, and they can help walk you through the data warehouse to find that answer. Now, we are really glad that you are here today, and we want to thank our presenters as well. We also want to encourage you to go explore some of those other webinars and presentations, as Richard and others pointed out. They can be found on this website as well as the OCS Training Resources website. All of our contact information is here, not just for the staff and the website administrators, but also for our presenters today. And we encourage you to get a hold of us. We're all willing to talk with you and help you use this website and explore it further. We want to thank you again for attending, and I'm going to now turn it over to Nicholas to answer questions.
Thanks, Melissa. So our first question is about the data warehouse. How do we get the actual data numbers from the data warehouse and not just charts?
Hi, this is Dan again. That's a great question. So when you actually generate reports, we showed you some of the charts today. But you can, below each of the charts that it generates, it also generates a table showing the numbers for all the fields and criteria you selected. And that table can be downloaded as an Excel file or a CSV file. And then you can use it and calculate your own numbers as you need to based on that data. The same is true for the profiles Katrina showed. So all of those you can download as well.
Thanks, Dan. So our next question's from someone who's newer to their role. I'm newer to my role. What are the resources I should start with to find out about LIHEAP in my state?
I guess I can start, and then Melissa may have some thoughts as well. Of course, it depends a little bit on what your role is, but we would definitely recommend looking at the grantee profile for your state to get a general picture of the LIHEAP program and what its focus has been in your particular state. You can explore the data warehouse, and then if you're wondering more about the program criteria for your state, the eligibility criteria, those kinds of things, we can point you in the right direction if you reach out to us. There's a lot of resources on this website. There may also be some in the virtual library that would be really helpful for you to go in and explore the bubbles and kind of navigate and find what you're looking for. Melissa, is there any other things you can think of for somebody who's newer to start with?
So two things came to mind. First, the page Katrina showed us with those standard reports where it kind of says who was served and how much money was spent. And, you can go back and look at historical data over time as well and see changes in your program. So that's a good place, like Dan said, to see what your program has been doing. The virtual library is a really great place to start for a new LIHEAP person. And the reason isn't just because of the resources, it's because it was designed by people who were new to LIHEAP and they didn't know what they didn't know. And so they weren't even sure what questions they should be asking. And that's something that the LIHEAP virtual library does that nothing else out there does, is it says here really are the key questions you should be asking as you move along. And then it, of course, provides resources to answer those questions. But if you're brand new, it can be really overwhelming, and that's a great place to start just to kind of get a basic framework for what you should be thinking about.
Thanks, Melissa. Our next question is about utilities and the relationship to other LIHEAP partners. Is there anything on the PMW about what utilities need to submit to their LIHEAP partners for the performance measures?
Yes. So if you're from a utility or a vendor and you're looking for information about maybe what your state or your LIHEAP contact, the information that they ask you for related to reporting and the performance measures, there are documents. There's something called the data collection guide, and it's actually on the homepage in those most common links. There's a link to that resource that kind of talks about some of the key items that are needed for the report, but it also has links at the bottom of the document to other additional documents that include vendor requests, what vendors are requested to provide for this data, and there's also templates that show examples of the information that states might be requesting of their utility vendors, and that utility vendors would be sharing to help complete the reports. Also in the virtual library, there's a bubble that talks about things like vendor agreements and has examples of what those look like from different vendors and grant recipients. And there's other related things if you're looking to find information on subcontracts, vendor relations, those kinds of topics.
Our next question, where does the data in the data warehouse actually come from? Is there a way to understand the sources?
Yes. So all the data in the data warehouse is information that is collected and reported. Primarily, the data is collected and reported by each LIHEAP program and has been reported to HHS in annual reports on households assisted, on the funding obligations. There's also some data in the data warehouse on the income eligible population for LIHEAP, and that's based on publicly available census data and the eligibility criteria that are used in different states for their income cutoffs. The original source for all of the reported data from states, they're described on the performance management website in the required reports page. But there's also, if you go to the data warehouse, there's an inventory document that lists kind of the sources of each of the data. There's a glossary of the terms. There's background on the data collection. So these are really helpful if you're trying to understand where something is coming from and trying to interpret the information. And as always, as Melissa said and others said, if you have questions, just reach out to us so that we can help to answer those questions.
Our next question is about the difference between the PMW and clearinghouse. What resources can I find on the clearinghouse that I can't find on the PMW?
Melissa, do you want to take this one, or would you like me to?
How about you start, Dan, and then I'll fill in.
Okay. So the performance management website contains all the data in the data warehouse if you're looking to find information and build reports. And it has information on performance measures data and how that data can be used. The clearinghouse has lots of information about state program design and also other energy assistance programs that exist in state and tribal and territory areas. The clearinghouse has broader policy information about LIHEAP and has publications on specific topics related to LIHEAP. So the clearinghouse is a little bit more policy programmatic design information, and the performance management website is very focused on performance measures data, performance data, and resources as states try to implement performance management in their programs.
I would just add, and it's just reiterating what you just said, that when you look at a program life cycle, right, and we look at continuous improvement, we're constantly looking at how we design our programs, how we run them, then how we measure them, and then we go back to the design and tweak it, and that circle goes around and around. And I think that the clearinghouse gives us the context and that program design piece so that we understand the outcomes that we're seeing on the performance management website.
Right. All right, any last questions, Nicholas? I see we have about a minute left.
Not that I can see.
Okay. Melissa, any final words? We definitely want to thank everyone for attending today. I encourage you to reach out if you have questions about the website.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here today.
All right. Thank you again. Have a great day.